I'm sure you're aware of certain reflexes. For example, if you were to put your finger into a flame, you would instantly withdraw your arm back. That's a withdrawal reflex. So these reflexes are vital to our homeostasis. They're defined as rapid automatic responses to specific stimuli, and they vary little in the response. There are 5 components of a reflex arc, and we'll look at each one individually. Again, here are the steps, the 5 components of a reflex arc, and there's a stimulation, activation of a sensory neuron, information processing, activation of a motor neuron, and response of a peripheral effector. We'll look at each step in turn. Activation of a receptor by a stimulus. Well, the receptor, as you recall, could be just a bare dendrite, or it can be a specialized cell. And this will detect physical or chemical changes. In this case, you're leaning on a tack, and it stimulates pain receptors. This activates a sensory neuron. Now, you recall that the stimulus has to be great enough to generate an action potential. In this case, leaning on the tack is enough to produce an action potential. The signal is going to enter the spinal cord through the posterior root. The signal is processed in this central nervous system. The sensory neuron releases the neurotransmitter, causing an excitatory postsynaptic potential at the inner neuron. In this case, there is an interneuron connecting the sensory neuron and the motor neuron. This is not always the case. The 4th step is activation of the motor neuron. The interneuron stimulates the motor neurons that is going to carry the action potential to the effector. And the response of the peripheral effector, in this case, your muscles. So the neuron releases neurotransmitter acetylcholine at the axon terminal, and you flex your arm. There are 4 classes of reflexes. We'll look at each class. Reflexes may be innate or acquired. Innate reflexes, you are born with innate reflexes. An example at birth would be suckling. Other examples would be withdrawal reflex or stretch reflexes. Acquired reflexes are called conditioned reflexes. An example of this would be salivating of Pavlov's dogs once they've learned to associate food with the sound of the bell. Reflexes may be somatic or visceral. Somatic reflexes are the involuntary control of skeletal muscles. For example, the withdrawal reflex when you put your hand on the tack. Visceral reflexes are autonomic or automatic, controlling involuntary effectors such as smooth muscle, cardiac muscle, glands, and adipose tissue. The reflex may be very short. The circuit may be very, very short, such as the monosynaptic reflex arc. This has one synapse, monosynaptic, so the sensory neuron synapses directly with the motor neuron in the spinal cord. It's the fastest response. Polysynaptic is slower because there's at least one interneuron between the sensory neuron and the motor neuron. The processing may take place in the spinal cord or in the brain. A simple reflex arc exemplifies which type of neuronal circuit? Serial. Which of these diagnostic tests produces a different result in normal babies than in normal adults? You would get this answer from your reading. Babinski reflex. Which of these is not part of a reflex arc? Lateral white column.